How come some people just seem to look great in whatever they wear? Well, it might look effortless, but believe me, it isn't. We're still very early in 2026, but I'm already noticing some specific things that stylish people are doing to set themselves apart. So today I want to talk about what those things are and how you can naturally incorporate them into your outfits in case you're looking for ideas. Something I've seen a big shift on recently with the most stylish people is the textures they're wearing. They always seem to wear things that have a heavy emphasis on tactile looking clothing, which makes them stand out and gives them presence, but not in a desperate and attention seeking way. More often than not, this is achieved by wearing well-made natural materials, which is another thing I've noticed amongst the most stylish. Heavyweight wools, good quality leather, thick flannels. They have a visual weight and kind of meatiness to them which turns heads. Much of this probably has to do with the slow movement away from the very minimal and basic styles that we've seen over the past few years. A lot of those pieces were very sleek, smooth, and purposefully low-key. But more recently, I feel like we're seeing people embrace the slightly more striking clothes. I also think it's partly down to the fact that stylish people actually wear and live in their clothes. They don't really care about keeping them pristine and box fresh. They're not afraid to get them dirty, worn in, faded, and they will repeat outfits over and over again without hesitation, as long as they're working and making sense for them. And the result is that their clothes look like they belong to the wearer, like it's a true part of their character, which results in them looking even more stylish. Last week I talked about some of the biggest trends we might see in 2026, according to GQ. And while I personally agree and disagree with some of them, the thing that all stylish people have in common is that they're following these trends, but loosely. We could take any of the trends I talked about in that video, like snakeskin boots, advanced layering, wide shoulders, detention core. What stylish people are doing is to pick and choose bits of those trends and incorporate them into their existing wardrobe. This requires you to be very intentional with what you decide to include. Following a trend for the sake of being part of the trend just isn't a very smart move. People will just instantly think you're phony and a bit of a clout chaser. Stylish people are subtle about it and only wear things that make sense as part of their existing style and look. Nothing ever looks forced or shoehorned in for the sake of a social media post. And when a trend is incorporated, it's rarely front and center as if to say, hey, I'm part of this trend. It looks like a natural part of their outfit and simply serves to enhance what's already going on. And that's exactly how trends should be used, in my opinion. Another universal truth amongst the most stylish people is that they rarely stray too far away from the classic fits. In many ways, this is related to the point we talked about with trends. Stylish people might lean a little bit into the baggier or skinnier fits every now and then, but only when it makes sense as part of their overall vibe. They'll use the shape of clothes to subtly improve their outfit rather than take over it. And part of the reasoning for that is because when clothes go to the extremes in terms of cut and fit, they start to look like they're wearing you rather than you wearing them. So instead, for the most part, stylish people ensure their clothes fit pretty standard and regular. Not too wide, not too narrow, not too long, not too cropped. As I said, this tends to give them a perpetually classic look. And classics are classic for a reason. They look the best. Without a doubt, one thing all stylish people have in common is confidence. I know it's easy to just say be confident, but confidence is something you can definitely work on. Because although being comfortable is hugely important from both a style and well-being perspective, sometimes we can all definitely get a bit too comfortable. And this can often result in nothing ever changing, which can impact your style. When you have the confidence to try new things, like different fits, colours, shapes, it can really broaden your horizon and elevate your fashion game. Equally though, it's about having the confidence to admit when something isn't working. These home truths can be just as impactful. Maybe you were influenced by someone, or spent a bit too much on a piece and realised you don't actually like it that much in real life. Don't just wear it for the sake of it, because it'll be obvious that you don't really like it, and it'll just give you an overall awkward look. Having the confidence to understand that something isn't working and to switch it out for something that is will be just as important in your journey and is something that all stylish people recognise. Now, I've talked about this before, but it's still true in 2026. Stylish people never ever cheap out on the quote-unquote smaller things. I'm talking about shoes, accessories like gloves and scarves, and especially jewellery. It's very easy and understandable to think that because they are proportionally the smallest parts of your overall outfit, they'll go unnoticed. But this couldn't be further from the truth. A bad pair of shoes or cheap looking chain can ruin an otherwise perfectly good outfit. Most of us instinctively know if something is cheaply done or trying to imitate something else, so they always stick out like a sore thumb. We love details in fashion, no matter how small. You'll notice how many fashion heads obsess over the little things. Well, it's because they matter, and stylish people know this. So they make sure to hunt down the right pieces no matter how big or small, which in turn makes their outfits look as good as they can be. Now, even though earlier we talked about the slight move away from minimalism, but that's not to say that people are going in the complete opposite direction and going full maximalist either. This particular point has always been true of the most stylish people. They never rely on things like big brand logos, corny slogans, or obnoxiously loud colours and patterns to make themselves stand out. When other people do this, they're automatically relegated to the bottom tier of style, in my opinion. So a lot like trends, stylish people do use these things, but very lightly, only as a tool to simply elevate what is already there, instead of being the main focal point of the entire outfit. So there's a few things I've noticed most stylish people seem to have in common at the moment. Of course, if you don't do any of these things, I'm not saying that you're not stylish. These are just a few observations, and you can choose to use them however you like. Do you guys agree with this, or do you have a completely different viewpoint? Let us know down in the comments. But anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra.